Hello. Data indicates that the majority of the home fires start in the kitchen, and most of them start because of unattended cooking. So today we want to talk a little bit about fire safety tips in regards to cooking. One of the first things that we consider is safety to those around you. As you can see from our demonstration here, this pot handle is outside and easily manipulated, which could burn someone, burn either the person there or God forbid a young child would come by and pull the pot on them. So the first thing we want you to remember is to have those handles turned inside and take the responsibility to protect yourselves and protect those around you. So from a standpoint of burning, it takes three things for a fire. It takes heat, it takes fuel, and it takes oxygen. So in the particular case of a stove, you have the heat by the virtue of the burner. You have the fuel, which would be your food, particularly grease-laden vapors and grease, highly volatile when they become superheated. And you also have oxygen, the oxygen that's out in the atmosphere. So you've got the three things, and once in the correct ratio, you would have automatic ignition. When that happens, it's important and most important for you to recognize whether this is going to be a fight or flight situation. Is this manageable based on your level of training, or is this something you need to back out and call 911? But if you choose, if this is a small fire and it just ignites, it's here, you've got a few options, okay? The first, you could remove the heat and you could turn the burner off. However, it takes a while. It's got a lot of retained heat, so that doesn't necessarily stop the burning process. You could do a few things. You could use baking soda. Some people have talked about baking soda, and it would extinguish a fire by virtue of smothering and taking the oxygen away from the fire. However, the challenge with this is you got to get above the fire in order to pour the baking soda. I think it's probably a good idea to have it, but a lot of people confuse this. The recommended way to extinguish this fire is to smother it by simply putting the lid over it. By putting the lid over it to take away the oxygen. So anytime you're working, always have the lid available. We actually recommend a larger lid than the pan itself. However, either will work, but for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a larger lid. Again, you would not want to go over the flame to put it on. You would simply want to take the lid, come from the side of the pan, and slide it over the top, and basically smother that fire out. The third option that you have is a fire extinguisher. Hopefully we've all been trained to use a fire extinguisher. So one of the things you have to consider, first of all, is it the proper fire extinguisher? So this is a multi-purpose fire extinguisher, a BC fire extinguisher that could be used on all different types of fires. The fire extinguisher that you wouldn't want to use in this situation is water. And probably we've all had the experience of putting water on a grease fire, and all it does is make the fire worse. So we know that water doesn't work, but the fire extinguisher will work. So the thing you have to understand is that there is a technique. So you don't have to be close to the stove or to the pot in order to use this fire extinguisher. You stand away. In fact, being close would probably hamper you because it could take the grease, if it was grease, and kick it up, and you would have a worse fire. So you stand away, never turn your back to the fire. You pull the pin, aim the extinguisher at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, and sweep back and forth in a blanket effect to blanket the extinguishing agent over the pan. Then we recommend that you, again, never turn your back away from the fire to ensure that it's out. And once you determine that it's out, take the next step, which would be, I would recommend that you call your fire department to come in and investigate to make sure that there's been no flame impingement on your cabinets or anything like that. And but again, very useful tools. All of these are very useful tools. Some of them take more effort than others. Some of them have a greater risk than others. So the least risky of the three would be the fire extinguisher. And so, but you have to make sure when you use a fire extinguisher that, number one, it's charged and ready to go. As you can see that there's an indicator on all fire extinguishers, and it has to be, there's a little gauge, and it has to be in the green. So check your fire extinguishers and make sure that they're prepared and ready to go. Another part of the stove and dangers to the stove that people talk about very frequently are fires in the oven. Sometimes we will have something cooking in the oven, and the juices of a turkey or of whatever you're cooking will boil over and get down to the heating element, and it will cause a flash fire, an awful lot of smoke. There's really nothing you need to do here, but as we said before, smother the fire out, shut the door, do not open the door and let the fire extinguish itself. Certainly turn it off, take away that heat source, make sure you keep the door shut, and the fire will extinguish itself. There's nothing else you have to do here. The most important thing that you can remember is to have functional 10-year lithium battery smoke alarms installed in your house. We all know that there are situations where we may have to get called away from our cooking, and we have no idea what's going on when we're not in the room. So we recommend that when you do have to leave the stove and you are cooking, you turn it off first. We can always go back and cook later. Turn it off and have that working smoke alarm. The working smoke alarm is the ability for you to get the message that there's a fire somewhere in your house, and the goal is to get everyone out safely. So again, it's very important that you understand these concepts and know that the majority of the fires that we experience in the state of Louisiana, and in fact nationally, are caused by unattended and unintentional emergencies that happen in the kitchen due to cooking. So have the ability to extinguish, have the ability to be alerted if you're not in the room, and understand that if you do have to leave that stove, you do have to leave that material that's cooking, if it's on the stove top, simply turn it off when you leave. Thank you very much.